Put one hand on the side of your knee, just above the hard edge where the thigh becomes the joint. Now stand up slowly, without rushing, and take one quiet step forward. Do not think about exercise yet. Do not think about pain yet. Think only about the exact place where your foot first meets the floor. If your heel lands far in front of you, your knee receives one kind of message. If the middle of your foot lands closer beneath you, your knee receives another. If you soften the step, shorten it, and let the ground meet you under your body instead of ahead of your body, the whole line changes. Your skin feels almost nothing dramatic. Your shoe may not look different. The room does not change, but the force has changed address. For the next step, make it smaller. Let your foot arrive closer to your hips. Let the sound of the step become quieter. Let the knee bend just enough that it is not a locked pole. Notice whether the impact feels like a knock, a slap, a drop, or a landing. That word matters, because your knee is not only hurt by how much force exists, it is affected by where that force enters, how fast it rises, what angle it chooses, and which tissues are asked to pay the bill. Now take one more step and imagine nothing mystical, only physics. A mass is moving, a surface stops part of that motion. Momentum has to go somewhere. Hawking spent his life studying what happens when energy meets a boundary. Your knee lives inside the same principle, just at a human scale. A boundary is never passive. The strange part is this: you can spend hours sitting with no visible injury, no fall, no twist, no dramatic event, and then your knee complains when you stand, walk downstairs, or jog across a street. It feels personal, almost unfair, as if the joint has become fragile while you were doing nothing. But sitting is not nothing. Sitting folds the hips, quiets the glutes, shortens the front of the body, removes repeated loading from the tendons, and teaches the nervous system a narrow geometry. Then when you stand up and strike the ground the same way you always have, the knee becomes the middleman between a stiff hip above and a repetitive impact below. The common explanation is simple. Your knees hurt because your knees are weak, old, damaged, or unlucky. The physics is less simple. Your knee is a hinge only in a drawing. In real life, it is a negotiation. The thigh bone rolls and glides, the shin bone rotates slightly, the kneecap floats inside a tendon and tracks through a groove. Cartilage spreads pressure, ligaments check motion, muscles change timing faster than you can decide anything consciously. And every time your foot lands, the ground sends a force upward. Not a metaphorical force, a measurable ground reaction force, the physical answer the earth gives back when your body asks to move across it. That force has a point of entry. Change that point, and you do not erase the load. You redistribute it. You change how quickly it arrives. You change the lever arm. You change the moment at the knee, the twisting demand your muscles must control. You change whether the kneecap is pressed harder against the femur or whether more work moves toward the ankle, calf, hip, and elastic tissues that are built to share it. That is why one tiny alteration can feel disproportionate, not because the knee was magically fixed, but because the equation was edited before the pain system had to raise its voice. So the question is not why your knee hurts only after impact. The question is sharper. Why does a joint that seems so solid respond so quickly when the point of impact changes? Before the knee can be understood, it has to be rescued from the way most people picture it. You were probably taught to imagine a joint as two bones meeting, like a door hinge with a little padding. A knee in that picture is mechanical, simple, and doomed by use. More steps mean more wear. More years mean less hope. Pain becomes the price of having moved. That picture is too crude. Your knee is not a single contact point. It is a pressure management system. The femur, tibia, patella, menisci, cartilage, capsule, tendons, ligaments, fat pads, nerves, and muscles create a living structure whose job is not to avoid force. Its job is to guide force. That distinction changes everything. The kneecap alone shows why. Your patella is not a useless bone in front of the knee. It acts like a pulley inside the quadriceps mechanism. By changing the angle at which the quadriceps tendon pulls, it helps the thigh muscle extend the knee with better leverage. But that advantage has a cost. When the quadriceps pulls, the patella is pressed against the femur. The stronger or more awkward the demand, the more pressure can pass through the patellofemoral joint, the contact between kneecap and thigh bone that many people feel as front-of-knee irritation. A small landing change can alter that pressure. Not because the kneecap is emotional, because the geometry is real. If the foot lands far ahead of the body, the leg often behaves like a brake. The heel contacts, the ground reaction force rises, and the body has to vault over a limb that is already in front. The knee may be asked to absorb load while the hip is late, and the ankle is stiff. The quadriceps works to control the knee. The patella feels more compression. The joint does not know your intention. It only receives the vector. A vector is force with direction. That is the hidden fact most people miss. Your knee does not experience impact as a single number. It experiences a direction, a rate, a timing pattern, and a location in the chain. Two steps can have the same body weight behind them and feel completely different, because the first step arrives as a hard brake, and the second arrives as a shared landing. Engineers understand this instantly. If you drop the same weight onto a steel plate, a rubber pad, or a spring system, the weight has not changed. The impact story has. The peak force, the speed of loading, the vibration, and the distribution through the structure all change. The material does not need a motivational speech. It needs the force to enter differently. Your knee is not steel, rubber, or spring. It is more complicated than all three. It contains sensors that report position, pressure, stretch, and threat. It is surrounded by muscles that can stiffen before contact if the brain predicts danger. It is influenced by your hip rotation, your foot arch, your step length, your cadence, your shoes, the floor, fatigue, attention, and the memory of previous irritation. One number gives this complexity a physical shape. During running, forces at the knee can rise to several times body weight, depending on speed, strike pattern, step length, and individual mechanics. During stair descent, the front of the knee may feel loaded because the quadriceps must control the body as it lowers. During long sitting, tissues are not being crushed by huge forces, but they are being held in one angle while the nervous system stops sampling the full range of motion. Then standing becomes a re-entry event. The belief is that the knee is a fragile part that must be protected from impact. The science is more precise. The knee is a load-sharing organ that needs impact to be distributed with intelligent timing. If you like this kind of explanation, where one small movement becomes a doorway into the physics of your own body, subscribe and leave a like now, before the mechanism gets deeper. It tells the channel to keep building these scripts around real science, not empty wellness phrases. This is where the title becomes dangerous if it is taken too literally. Changing the point of impact does not guarantee that pain disappears. Knee pain can come from injury, inflammation, tendon overload, cartilage changes, nerve sensitivity, hip weakness, training errors, or medical conditions that need a professional evaluation. But in many ordinary moments, especially when the pain is linked to repeated stepping, running, stairs, or standing after long sitting, the knee is not only reporting damage, it may be reporting a force pattern. And force patterns can change fast. The first layer is immediate, and it happens before you have time to narrate it. Your foot touches the ground. Skin receptors in the sole detect pressure. Joint receptors sense angle. Muscle spindles in the calf, thigh, and hip detect stretch. Golgi tendon organs detect tension. The spinal cord receives the first wave of information and adjusts muscle tone in milliseconds. Your brain does not wait for a full written report. It works from prediction. If your foot strikes hard ahead of you, the prediction is braking. The body stiffens to manage the collision. If the step lands closer under you, the prediction shifts towards support and continuation. The nervous system prepares a different response. The knee feels this as mechanics, but the beginning is sensory. In 2013, Juha-Pekka Kulmala and colleagues at the University of Jyväskylä studied running-related knee loading in different foot strike patterns. Their work reported that forefoot strikers showed lower knee loading than rear foot strikers, while the load was not simply deleted from the body. More demand moved towards the ankle and calf. This is the key. The body does not make forces vanish. It routes them. That routing is the mechanism. When the heel strikes far in front, the collision can create a sharper impact, transient, a rapid rise that travels through the skeleton before the muscles have fully absorbed it. The knee then participates in braking. The quadriceps may contract strongly to control flexion. The kneecap may press with more force against the femur. The joint becomes a receiving station for a fast, forward blocking event. When the landing point moves closer to the center of mass, or when the step shortens, or when the contact shifts slightly toward the midfoot, the body has a better chance to use the ankle, calf, hamstrings, glutes, and hip as a linked suspension system. The knee still works, but it may no longer work alone, late, and surprised. Think of a car hitting a pothole with a rigid wheel versus a tuned suspension. The road did not become gentle. The system changed the way force traveled from contact to frame. Your body is not a car, but the principle is familiar because physics does not care whether the structure is metal or tissue. The second layer unfolds over seconds to minutes. A quieter step changes muscle recruitment. The calf may take more eccentric work, meaning it lengthens while resisting force. The hip may contribute more control. The trunk may organize differently. Step cadence may rise slightly because shorter steps often require quicker rhythm. With each repetition, the nervous system receives evidence that the knee can be loaded without the same sharp signature. Pain is not a simple damage meter. It is a protective output influenced by tissue state, threat prediction, attention, previous experience, and the quality of incoming signal. When the impact pattern becomes less threatening, the nervous system may reduce the volume. Not because it was imaginary, because protection is adjustable. This matters after sitting. Hours in a chair do not only bend the knee, they reduce the variety of forces the leg has felt all day. The hip flexors live shortened. The gluteal muscles are not asked to produce propulsion. The ankle moves through a tiny range. The foot becomes a platform rather than a sensor. Then the first walk after sitting can be loud, stiff, and narrow. The knee receives impact from below and compression from above inside a body that has not been rehearsing variation. So changing the point of impact works like changing the first word in a sentence. The rest of the sentence follows differently. The third layer is systemic and less obvious. When impact changes, the brain updates the body map. The cerebellum, the prediction center at the back of the brain, compares expected movement with actual feedback. The motor cortex adjusts the next step. The vestibular system, which helps orient your head and balance, joins the decision. The autonomic nervous system may also respond because pain, threat, and stiffness are tied to arousal. A softer, better-rooted step can lower the sense of alarm, allowing muscles to stop guarding as if every landing is an emergency. This is where Hawking becomes useful, not as a doctor of knees, but as a physicist of boundaries. Hawking showed that a boundary is not empty. The event horizon of a black hole, once imagined as a one-way silent edge, became in his theory a place where energy, temperature, and information created a paradox. The border mattered. The surface was not just where something ended, it was where physics revealed itself. Your foot meeting the ground is also a boundary. The knee does not touch the earth, but it lives with the consequences of that meeting. Every step asks the same question. Where does energy enter? How fast does it rise? Which tissues absorb it? Which joint becomes the tax collector? Which muscle arrived early? Which one arrived late? The pharmaceutical comparison is tempting, but must be handled carefully. Pain-relieving medication can change chemistry, dampen inflammation, or reduce perception. It can be useful when appropriate and guided correctly. But a landing change acts upstream of chemistry. It changes the mechanical input that may be feeding the irritation in the first place. It is not a drug. It is a modification of the signal before the nervous system has to interpret it as danger. Industry spends millions building shock absorbers, vibration dampers, pressure mapping insoles, gait labs, foam systems, and robotic legs that can survive repeated ground contact. Your body already owns a version of this technology. It is called coordinated movement. It works only when the point of contact, the timing of the muscles, and the direction of force are allowed to cooperate. When they do not cooperate, the knee becomes the complaint department. This is why the same person can feel knee discomfort in one shoe and not another, on one surface and not another, with one stride length and not another, after sitting but not after warming up, downhill but not uphill, walking fast but not walking slow. The tissue is the same tissue. The equation keeps changing, and the knee reads equations beautifully. The modern problem is not that you walk too much. Many people walk too little and then strike too abruptly when they do move. The day is built from long stillness interrupted by sudden demand. Chair, car, chair, couch, stairs, rushed pavement. The tissues are starved of graded loading and then exposed to blunt loading. That rhythm is not ancient. It is architectural. Your ancestors did not live inside perfect fitness routines, but they lived inside constant variation. Dirt, slope, stones, squatting, kneeling, carrying, turning, uneven ground, short steps, long steps, soft ground, hard ground. The knee was not spared. It was educated. A joint educated by variation learns many ways to distribute force. A joint educated by chairs and flat floors learns fewer. Absence accumulates quietly. The absence of varied impact can show up as front-of-knee pressure when you go downstairs, a dull ache after driving, stiffness when you stand from a desk, irritation after a short jog that should have felt easy, or a strange sense that the knee does not trust the first few steps of the day. You may blame age, weight, shoes, weather, or yesterday's workout. Sometimes those matter, but the deeper pattern may be that your knee has been receiving the same narrow message too often. The timeline is not dramatic. One day of sitting may simply make the first steps feel wooden. Weeks of repeated sitting and hard braking steps may increase sensitivity. Months of low movement variety may train the brain to guard certain angles. The body adapts to what you repeat, even when what you repeat is stillness followed by collision. Here is the reformulation. The common belief is that knee pain means the joint cannot handle force. The mechanism rewrites it. Many knees complain because force keeps entering through the same badly timed doorway. That sentence does not diagnose you. It gives you a lever, because if the doorway matters, then a smaller step matters. A quieter landing matters. A foot that arrives nearer the body matters. A knee that bends softly instead of locking matters. A hip that participates matters. A calf that is prepared matters. A surface that gives slightly matters. A warm-up that restores rhythm matters. The absence of these things is not neutral. It is training. Modern life trains the leg to be two separate instruments. The foot becomes a shoe-shaped block. The knee becomes a hinge you notice only when it hurts. The hip becomes furniture. The spine becomes a passenger. Then you ask the knee to manage impact without the orchestra. No wonder it protests. Before the next part, subscribe and leave a like if you want more scripts that turn ordinary pain signals into understandable mechanics. And in the comments, write the exact moment your knee usually complains. Stairs, running, standing after sitting, walking downhill, getting out of the car, or the first steps in the morning. The knee is never alone. That is the expansion most people miss. A knee that hurts when you change impact is not always a knee story. It can be a foot story, an ankle story, a hip story, a trunk story, a nervous system story, and sometimes a recovery story. Start below. Your foot is the first translator. When it lands, It decides how contact becomes information. The heel is excellent for certain walking patterns. The midfoot and forefoot can shift more demand toward the ankle and calf. None of these are morally superior. Each has a cost. A sudden switch to forefoot striking can overload the calf or Achilles tendon if the tissues are not prepared. A rigid heel strike far ahead can increase braking demand and knee load in some people. The answer is not to worship one strike. The answer is to understand that the location of impact changes who works. Then the ankle speaks. An ankle that cannot dorsiflex well, meaning the shin cannot travel over the foot with enough freedom, may force motion elsewhere. The foot turns out, the arch collapses or stiffens, the knee drifts, the hip compensates. The knee becomes the visible symptom of a conversation that began lower. Then the hip speaks. The hip controls the thigh. If the hip cannot manage rotation and side-to-side stability, the femur may move under the kneecap in a way that changes patellar tracking. The kneecap may feel like the villain, but the thigh bone is the road it travels on. A small change in foot impact can reduce the knee's complaint, partly because it gives the hip enough time to enter the movement. Then the trunk speaks. A stiff trunk, collapsed posture, or rushed forward lean can shift loading. Your center of mass decides where the foot must land to catch you. If your body falls forward and the foot reaches out to stop it, the knee receives a braking world. If your body stacks more calmly and the foot lands beneath you, the step becomes less like catching a fall and more like continuing a wave. This is not wellness decoration. It is evolutionary design. Humans are not built only for sitting and then sprinting to the elevator. Human locomotion evolved around repeated ground contact over variable terrain. The leg is a chain of elastic and sensory structures. Tendons store and return energy. Muscles tune stiffness. Joints guide direction. The nervous system predicts the next landing based on the last one. Pain protects when the prediction becomes too costly. Changing impact point is powerful because it respects that design. It does not isolate the knee and beg it to behave. It changes the conditions under which the knee is asked to work. That is the difference between correction and command. A command says, "Stop hurting." A correction changes the input. Hawking's physics reminds us that what looks like empty space is never truly empty, and what looks like a simple boundary may contain the deepest rules of the system. In the body, the ground is not background. The ground is part of walking. The surface, the shoe, the speed, the foot angle, the step length, and the landing sound all become part of the knee's environment. The joint is not sealed away inside you. It is exposed to the world through every step. This is why a small protocol can be useful if it is done with patience, not as treatment, not as a promise, as a way of giving the nervous system a different mechanical sentence to read. Try it after sitting, not when you are in sharp pain, swollen, unstable, or recovering from an injury that needs medical care. Stand near a wall or chair if balance is uncertain. Take 10 ordinary steps and listen. Not emotionally. Physically. Listen for the sound of impact, the location of pressure under the foot, the way the knee receives the landing, and whether the step feels like braking or rolling. Then change only one variable. Shorten the step by 10 to 15%. Do not force a dramatic stride change. Do not bounce. Do not rise onto your toes like a sprinter. Let the foot land a little closer beneath your body. Let the knee stay soft. Let the heel, midfoot, or whole foot meet the ground with less reach. The goal is not a new identity. The goal is a quieter collision. Take 20 steps like this. If the knee feels calmer, you have not proven that the knee is healed. You have discovered that the force pathway is negotiable. That is useful information. If the front of the knee still feels compressed, reduce the step again and slow down. If the calf suddenly works too hard, you shifted too much load downward too fast. Return toward your normal strike and change step length instead. If the hip feels absent, place one hand on the side of the pelvis and feel whether it stays level as you walk. If the foot slaps, slow the landing until the sound softens. Sound is not perfect science, but it is a practical clue. Loud steps often reveal abrupt loading. The minimum dose is 60 seconds. 60 seconds is enough to interrupt the automatic pattern after a chair, enough to provide new sensory input, and short enough to avoid turning the experiment into exercise fatigue. Walk across a room or hallway. Turn slowly. Repeat. Your target is not sweat. Your target is a different impact signature. The sign that the mechanism is active is not euphoria, it is specificity. You begin to feel that a step has parts. Contact, pressure, bend, push, release. The knee stops feeling like the only actor. The foot, calf, hip, and trunk reappear. The movement becomes less like dropping weight onto a hinge and more like passing force through a chain. There are variations. If walking is uncomfortable, practice in place. Stand with both feet under you. Shift weight gently from heel toward midfoot without lifting the toes aggressively. Feel how the knee changes when pressure moves. Then try tiny marching steps where the foot returns under the hip rather than reaching forward. If balance is limited, hold a support. If you are a runner, do not suddenly convert your entire run. Use 30 to 60 seconds of shorter, quieter strides during a warm-up. Let the calf adapt over weeks, not ego. Avoid the common errors. Do not slam the forefoot into the ground to avoid the heel. That only moves the problem. Do not overbend the knees until the thighs burn. That turns a coordination lesson into a strength test. Do not stare down at your feet the whole time, because the head position changes balance and trunk tone. Do not chase zero pain as proof, because the nervous system may need time and some pain needs evaluation. Do not use this to push through swelling, locking, giving way, or sharp pain. The body is intelligent, but intelligence is not invincibility. The most useful version is humble. After sitting, stand. Breathe once. Take a smaller step. Make it quieter. Let the foot arrive closer. Let the knee bend softly. Notice whether impact feels less like a strike and more like a transfer. Repeat for 1 minute. Then go on with your day. Before the final thought, subscribe and leave a like if this helped you feel the physics instead of just hearing it. This series is built for people who want the smallest daily gestures explained with real mechanisms and no exaggeration. There is something almost embarrassing about the solution being so small. A knee can dominate your attention. It can change how you take stairs, how you get out of a chair, how you decide whether to walk, whether to run, whether to trust your own body in public. Pain narrows the future. It makes the next step feel like a negotiation with something invisible. And then the first piece of power is not a machine, not a new personality, not a heroic routine. It is where the foot lands. That feels too ordinary until you remember that physics often hides inside ordinary contact. Hawking looked at the most extreme objects in the universe and asked what happens at the edge. Not at the center, not in the obvious place, but at the boundary where one system meets another. There he found that the border was alive with consequences. Your life is not a black hole, your knee is not a cosmic event, but your body is also made of boundaries, skin and floor, foot and shoe, tendon and bone, kneecap and groove, prediction and sensation, habit and correction. The modern world teaches you to ignore these edges until they hurt. It lets chairs shape your joints, lets flat floors erase variation, lets speed turn walking into impact, lets shoes mute the foot, lets the knee become responsible for forces that were supposed to be shared. A different landing is a small act of attention returned to the edge. Not fear of movement, not worship of perfect form, not the fantasy that one technique solves every body. Just the recognition that pain sometimes begins before the painful place. It begins where force enters. It begins in the first contact, the rushed step, the repeated angle, the unshared load, the old pattern that became invisible because it was yours. When you change the point of impact, you are not escaping gravity. You are negotiating with it more intelligently. You are telling the foot to stop being a block. You are telling the hip to come back into the conversation. You are telling the knee it does not have to be the only witness to the collision. You are giving the nervous system a new piece of evidence. The body does not need every answer at once. Sometimes it only needs the next step to arrive differently.